Our readings today put before us two issues central to our path as disciples of Jesus: acceptance and forgiveness. These are not peripheral or optional. They sit right at the heart of our daily practice. Whatever religion we might espouse, whatever religious labels we claim, if we are not practicing forgiveness and acceptance, then we are not walking in the way of Jesus. I guess most of us have grasped this already. The problem for many Christians in this subject area is the issue of guilt and shame, that we still carry the wounds and hurt of wrongs done to us. We feel we cannot live up to what is expected of us, and as a result, we are touchy and critical about others. This is normal for religious people. Those of us who are attracted to religion often need reassurance that we are in the right and doing the right thing, that we belong to the group which is in the right, and that we are safe from whatever we conceive damnation to be. We crave approval. We have high expectations of ourselves. We are ashamed about being in the wrong. So I'd like to address this topic by considering what is the nature of forgiveness, the nature of acceptance, and the quality of love. Since forgiveness, acceptance, and love are required of us by Jesus, and so they should be at least achievable and not as hard to do as we suppose. Thinking first about acceptance, the subject matter of our epistle today, accept the one whose faith is weak, without quarrelling over disputable matters. I would suggest to you that the person whose faith is weak might be yourself. Living with exacting expectations is exhausting and generates toxic shame. Always feeling you're not good enough, that you are inadequate, that if only people knew what you're really like, they would despise you. This wears you out. Shame generated by impossible expectations in turn leads to pretense, hypocrisy, keeping up appearances. This is a huge problem in the church. At any given time, most people in most churches are pretending to be something they are not, because of what they believe is expected of them. Our primitive nature is very sensitive to pretense. Inauthenticity has a definite flavour. So religious people tend to get used to a climate of dishonesty. My own belief is that this is the main driver of the flourishing of spiritual and sexual abuse in the church. If you can sense that all the people are not being straight with you most of the time, it's hard to know who you can trust. This is especially true for children, trained to respect authority and to obey, rather than go with their gut and say no to those they do not like or trust. Behaviour and conduct begin to be prioritized above reality, authenticity, and honesty. We learn to improve, as they say, our performance. So I would propose that the first work of acceptance is to accept yourself. Be yourself. Remember, Jesus taught us to love our neighbour as ourselves, and this we tend to do. Those for whom self-acceptance is a problem tend to project their guilt and shame onto others as impossibly high standards. Never pretend to be what you're not. Make peace with who you are. A friend of mine, training for priesthood, remarked one evening in the pub, "I do my best, and sometimes I get it wrong. And when I do, God forgives me." If we can bring that attitude to our daily life and practice, we will relieve so much tension, alleviate so much guilt and shame. Accepting our own frailty, our own confusion and fear and doubt, takes us significantly closer to extending the same generosity to others. Those familiar with transactional analysis will recognise the title of a 1960s book about psychology. I'm okay, you're okay. That's the place we're aiming for, where, because we have accepted ourselves as we are healthy enough to accept others as they are, with all their human frailty, without the touchiness and critical condemnation that is the projection of our own internal shame. When we move on to considering forgiveness, again I think we may be helped by reframing our perspective. It helps if we understand that forgiveness is not a feeling. If we think that forgiveness requires us to feel good about someone who has hurt and wronged us, we set ourselves up for a sense of profound inadequacy. Notice that our readings frame the idea of forgiveness as a transaction, not as a feeling. The phrases used are paying back, keeping an account. The vocabulary is about payment and debt. If we move our concept of forgiveness away from feelings and into transactions, it becomes much easier to forgive. It becomes realistic and releases us from endless games of self-delusion in the attempt to feel worthy. When someone has wronged us, been mean to us or told lies about us, stolen something from us, or in any way hurt and damaged us, we won't like them or trust them, and there's no reason why we should. That's okay. But in the spiritual dimension, the person who has wronged us is now indebted to us before God. The Gospel reading we had here in church last week included Jesus saying that whatever we forgive will be forgiven in heaven, and whatever we still hold against someone will still be held against them in heaven. Personally, I'd like to see hell entirely empty. Whatever anyone has done to me, I don't want it held against them eternally. After all, I'm not perfect myself. This is the point of our gospel parable today. Forgiveness is to some extent an expression of humility. Other people may meanwhile be struggling to forgive me for what I consider to be entirely reasonable, but has nonetheless hurt them. What Jesus is encouraging us to do is not to like horrible people or offer narcissists the opportunity to put the boot in a second time. Absolutely not. It is reasonable and healthy to create and maintain firm relational boundaries to protect ourselves from abuse. Furthermore, if a person has committed an actual crime, violence or theft or sexual abuse or whatever, it is perfectly possible to both forgive and prosecute them. There needs to be some damage limitation imposed on the wreckage they can perpetrate. What Jesus is encouraging us to do is to cancel the eternal spiritual debt they owe us before the throne of God. So, when someone has hurt us, we put in place whatever is necessary to protect ourselves against future abuse, warn anyone else who may be in danger or anyone who is in a position of responsibility who may need to know, like a police officer or a safeguarding officer. And then, before God, we release the person from any spiritual debt to us. We wipe the slate clean. We don't have to like them, continue to interact with them, or give them further opportunities to hurt us. We just have to wipe the slate clean before God and let them go. Perhaps we say quietly to Jesus, "They owe me nothing. They're free to go." And that, of course, sets us free as well. Resentment, the sense that someone owes you something, binds them to you. We don't want to do that with people who are destructive. Sometimes, of course, either the wrong done to us affects us permanently, continually causing problems for us to solve, or else we are not in a position to remove ourselves from interaction with a colleague or a family member who has damaged us. And this means we repeatedly need to forgive them. Perhaps this is what Jesus meant by the 70 times 7. And also, those who hurt us repeatedly usually can't see the problem, blame us, and never apologise. If you have such a person in your own life, when you think of them, it can help to pray quietly inside, "I bless you with the love of the Lord. You are free to go." Do not bind them to you with either resentment and bitterness or second chances. Feelings are not something you can command. If forgiveness is required of us, then it cannot be a feeling. There is a difference between a reaction and a response. When someone hurts you, your reaction may be anger or pain or upset or distress. Your reaction is how you feel. But your response is what you choose to do about the situation. The healthy Christian response is to release the person before God while taking the appropriate steps to put a stop to the wrongdoing. Acceptance and forgiveness are central to the duty of love, Therefore they, like love itself, cannot be feelings. They start with accepting and forgiving yourself to create a climate in which touchiness and contempt cannot flourish. After that, it's about refraining from blame, about learning to manage your own feelings of anger and hurt in a mature way, about taking steps to limit further abuse while cancelling before God any spiritual debt incurred. If you do this, you will empower yourself to walk in freedom and in peace. You will hold your light steady in this world. You will make peace with the truth of who you really are.